Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. If you'd like to take a seat, please, we'll get started. Thank you. Right, well, let's get underway. So welcome to the Museum London Docklands. My name is Robin Mortimer. I'm Chief Executive at the Port of London Authority. It's very nice to see you here. Thank you for coming to our public meeting. Lots of faces that are familiar to me now after being at the PLA for a number of years. And as usual at our public meetings, there are various colleagues from the PLA here who will be helping to answer questions as we go through the evening. The usual format for these I'll follow, which some of you have seen many times before, which is I'll run through some slides which provide updates on things happening on the river, and then we'll have a chance for any questions which invariably don't stick to my slides. Do feel free to ask anything that's relevant to the PLA, or sometimes not, in which case I will tell you if it's not the PLA, it's somebody else. This evening we're actually combining. We've in the past had public meetings in what we call the lower, middle, and upper districts. We found over the years that the physical attendance at the lower meeting has sort of dwindled, and last time I think there were about 3 times as many people from the PLA as those who came. So we thought actually it might make sense to combine the middle and the lower district meetings, but also have it as a sort of joint online and in-person forum, so people can join online, and a number of people are, I think, so that those who can't travel here at this particular time can sort of join remotely and ask questions. So as we get through to the Q&A bit, Sean, our Director of Corporate Affairs, will sort of field questions from our virtual guests to me, and I can answer them, and hopefully people online will be able to pick them up that way. So let me just start then by running through sort of what we're going to cover. So I'll give some updates on some sort of news things, so PLA updates, and then I'll talk about the 3 strands of our Thames Vision 2050. So that's the natural Thames, destination Thames, and trading Thames, which is, there are many ways of thinking about the role of the tidal Thames, but this is the way we've divided up our Thames Vision into the role the river plays in those three ways for London and for the wider country. And then, as I say, there'll be an opportunity for some questions. Just so by way of introduction, just to put up there some mug shots of the executive team. I should also say that our chair, Johnson Cox, was here earlier, but actually, unfortunately, had to go early for dinner, and the timings got a bit mixed up. So he really wanted to say hello at the start, but can't. But anyway, he sends his best wishes. Yeah, unfortunately, couldn't stay. Some colleagues are here. So as I mentioned, Sean is here. Grace Rawlinsley, our Director of Sustainability, is here. James Stride, our Chief Harbourmaster, is here at the front, and Jim Trimmer, I think, will be further back. He's at the back there. But we'll make him come forward to answer questions when we get to that point. Okay, so just to orientate yourself, I'm sure most of you are very familiar with the PLA in our jurisdiction, but just as a reminder, we cover 95 miles of the tidal Thames, from Teddington Lock in the west out to the North Sea, a line roughly between Clacton and Margate. And obviously along that stretch there are many iconic places that we could point to, but here we are just to the east of the City of London, to the west of the Thames Barrier. Our headquarters are in Gravesend, and the Port of Tilbury and London Gateway are the 2 biggest terminals in the port. So a few sort of facts and figures to sort of give a bit sense of the scale of what the PLA is about. So we are the biggest port in the UK again. So that's sort of in a sense number 1. In terms of the way we measure that tends to be measured in terms of port tonnage. So last year we carried around 52 million tons of cargo in the port, but that is by no means sort of all of what the Thames is about, clearly. As well as carrying lots of inland freight, there were also around 9 million passenger journeys last year, a growing market in light freight goods moving on the river, and a huge number of cultural and sporting events. So in fact, that number sort of ever grows. I think partly because we're better at collecting the data, but also because the events themselves are growing. So we've got 719 we counted last year. One of our key performance measures as the organisation is our pilotage service. So of our 470 employees, we have around 120 pilots, and also a lot of others who are involved in ensuring the safety of navigation. And I'm pleased to say that we provided an over 99% reliability service last year to our port customers. And in doing that, there was only one serious navigational incident on the river, which was not a PLA-related incident. In fact, it involved an RNLI vessel travelling at speed, and that one incident is down from 12 to 13 on average a decade ago. So actually, a big improvement in overall safety. So as I mentioned, I'll cover now the sort of three strands of the Thames Vision 2050, which gives a good framework, I hope, for all the issues we deal with. As I say, we talk about the trading Thames, which is the role of the Thames as the hosting the #1 UK port, and also the transition to net zero of all the commercial activity which is happening on the river. Secondly, the destination Thames, so a place that people want to come to for leisure, recreation, whether it's on the water, rowing and kayaking, or other sports, or beside the water, or as tourists and so on. And then the role of the natural Thames, in my old world, the role of providing ecosystem services to society and also to nature itself, a clean river free of sewage, waste and pollution. I'm going to start with that, in fact. So sorry, I should just say that in terms of the sort of the geography and the updates, we think about the central and lower area of the river as being from Putney to Crossness, and then from Crossness down to the Thames estuary. So do not feel obliged to, if you want to ask questions about the upper bit of the river above Putney, then of course do so. But the lower and middle part is this area. Now, in terms of some updates, so we've recently published an update to the Tideway Code, which is something which we do in collaboration with the sporting organisations, in this case the Thames Regional Rowing Council and Paddle UK. It's a very important document obviously for all recreational river users, and provides guidelines on safe usage. It includes, for the first time, some guidance on the new combined sewage overflows from the Tideway project. So the reason for this is that the old Bazalgette sewers, which have now been intercepted by Tideway Tunnel, in some cases the new combined CSOs are further out into the river, closer to the navigational channel, and therefore there are different risks associated with those. The good news, of course, is that the CSOs are being used far less. In fact, since Tideway was connected, the tunnel was connected, there have been no sewage overflows to the river, which is a great testament to the scale of that project. Even last weekend, which is one of the heaviest rainfall events since it opened, the tunnel was only around 40% full, so there's been no sewer overflows from it. But in the event of a very, very big storm in a very short period of time, and the CSOs do need to discharge, there are some risks around the impact on small vessels, and that's dealt with in the code. And more generally, it's about promoting good practice, and a lot of what James's team and the Harbour Masters team do is around sort of education for river users, in which we work obviously with a lot of others. Another update item, so we are going through something which we call the Marine Centre Transformation Programme. So as I mentioned, the Thames is already the biggest port for port trade, but we are anticipating growth in the port. Our work for the Thames Vision included some work by Oxford Economics to look at how port trade will grow over the next 25 years. And we reckon that it could grow to around 80 million tonnes from 55 million tonnes now. That's going to be more big ships in the estuary, particularly calling it London Gateway. And obviously that is combined with a lot of other river users. So in anticipation of that growth, we've been investing in our Port Control Centre, which is where we operate the 24/7 vessel traffic services that provides safety advice and manages the traffic on the river. We're investing around £10 million, both in the IT in that. We've bought a new system from a company called Kongsberg, which is sort of leading technology, and we're creating a much better space. We've also combined in one location. So we used to have a team at the Thames Barrier and others down in Gravesend, but actually we're all now in one location. So we've got an overview of the whole estuary in one place. And here's virtually the latest pictures. So we're at the stage of, on the left there, of dismantling and refurbishing the building. Interesting, when we looked at the options for the building, we did look at sort of knocking it down and rebuilding it. It isn't the most beautiful building in the world, but actually one of the big arguments against doing that is that the embedded carbon from a rebuild is way in excess of the energy use. So actually it takes, it was something like 100 years to recoup the embedded carbon if you rebuild. It's quite a sort of striking difference. So we decided to refurbish, and we're going to add a layer on top, so there's a better view of the river from the top. But that's where we're at in that project. And in the meantime, we've got a sort of temporary ops centre in a building next door, and that's a picture of it, which is operating now. Obviously, we have to have absolutely sort of seamless transfer. We can't have a gap in service when we do these projects. I've just got, I think this is the final slide on sort of updates, then I'll go into some specific issues around the Thames Vision. So this is sort of no particular order. Many of you will be familiar with the fact that we had an inquiry earlier in the year, a public inquiry held into our harbour revision order proposals. I'm afraid there's nothing much to say about that this evening. You may well wish to ask me about it, but my answer will be it's with the MMO, because actually until we get the response from the Marine Management Organisation, which is the organisation which takes receipt of the inquiry report, we are as much in the dark about what the next step is as anybody else is. So we're waiting to get that. They've promised us something in the next few weeks, but we sort of wait and see exactly what the timetable is. One of the things that came up in the HRO inquiry was the issue of charges for balconies, which has been a topic of discussion in this meeting previously. And we undertook to carry out an independent review and to get an independent surveyor from RICS, the chartered organisation, the professional body. It took us a little time they took a little time to find somebody, but we have appointed now a surveyor who's been talking to some of the balcony owners and is looking at the options. Again, we are waiting for a report, so we haven't got anything new particularly to say on that, other than the fact this independent review is underway. We paused any increase in charges whilst that review is happening, because obviously it would be seem inconsistent if we were reviewing it and then carrying on with the same approach as previously. So it's sort of paused while we wait for that report. We've also, as I mentioned, the overall Tideway Code, we've also, in the last few months, been working with the fast RIB operators who operate in stretches of the river near to here on a code of conduct around sort of, if you like, sort of good neighbourly behaviour. So issues around wash impact, noise impact, and other sort of behaviours. So this is, we can obviously explain further about the sort of issues around speed limits, which I think has come up in a question before the session. But the Code of Conduct sort of sets out some sort of standards which they should adhere to, and there are routes to report any breaches of those standards through to our harbour master. So that's about sort of trying to get an activity which many people enjoy and value. Not everybody does, of course, but many people do, to be able to happen in a way which has the least impact on residents around. And the final sort of update point to mention, I was just talking to Peter Finch on this from the Thames Society. We've been carrying out a review of the access points on the river, really sort of led by Jim Trimmer and his team and our civil engineers, to look at the issues around safety, really, and the quality of the access points. So this could occupy at least an hour in itself. But the short version is there are an awful lot of access points on the river. We've charted around over 300. The majority of them, nobody knows who owns them. There are a sort of subset that the PLA owns, but the majority nobody claims ownership of. Some of them were on a list dating back to 1707. I'm looking at Jim, I think that's the correct date. 1708, sorry, I beg your pardon. So 1708, and some of them have sort of arisen over the centuries. But anyway, the point was to sort of look at the condition of these, and we've now sort of done a piece of work to analyse which are those which are in the least good condition and which are used regularly by the public. So if you like, those are in the top right-hand section of a classic risk matrix. And we're now in the business of improving them and making sure the signage is accurate. Now, we have actually decided that in addition to the 6 of those 30-something that are in that top category, which the PLA owns, which we are in making sure are in good condition, we are going to improve and update the others, even though the ownership is not clear. We'll have to sort of caveat that we do not own these structures, but we're just going to go and repair them anyway, and I can't imagine anybody's going to object. But then the issue then, of course, becomes around signage, because what we don't want is the unintended consequence of an improved set of stairs leading to people on the foreshore who are not familiar with the risks and actually increasing the risks to people. So we're looking at the signage issue very carefully as well. Okay, just, no, I keep saying, I think we've put this one late, so I beg your pardon. I've put this in because I thought this is bound to come up, and so therefore it would be worth just kind of talking about Greenwich Ship Tier before going into some of the sort of broader updates. So one of the things that we often say, and I guess it is a sort of the background to the PLA's approach to the way in which the river operates, is that this is a busy working river and always has been. And one of the activities that happens on there is ships coming up to some of the ship tiers, and that includes Greenwich and HMS Belfast, and cruise ships obviously are part of that mix. It is a very popular destination, and we know that cruise ship customers are, the demand for cruise shipping is increasing. Rather like the issues with the sort of the RIB operators, one of the things which we are in the process of doing is to get together the operator, which in this case is mainly Viking Cruises, which operates mainly to that site, and all the local community groups and residents and the local authority, if they wish to participate, they haven't as yet, Royal Borough of Greenwich, to actually look at, again, some of the issues around noise, lighting, tannoy announcements, passengers, where they go, what times of day and so on, how those are routed, to try and minimize the impact. So I think our position, which won't be popular with everybody, is the cruise ships are here to stay. It's a working river. That berth's been used for a long, long time. We want to make it as positive for the local community as possible. I think the operator needs to do more to explain what the benefits are to the local community as well, because of course actually the people who come on the cruise ships do put a lot of money into the UK and the London economy. How much of that finds its way locally, less clear, but that's why the government is very keen on promoting cruise ships, because it's a big part of the UK tourism sector. So we are working, as I say, to try and address some of the immediate issues around neighbourhood noise and lighting and so on. We are also going to be looking at the sort of longer term options around the infrastructure, including shore power. We can talk about air quality, and we have done at these meetings previously. Certainly we would be keen to see shore power at that site. We've run into brick walls previously in terms of the practicalities of that, actually getting shore power to that part of Greenwich, and the enormous cost of it, which at the moment there is no shore power facility in the world that hasn't been subsidised by government in some way. So therefore there are sort of big costs around it. But we're certainly keen to look at that, and we're going to be working with Viking on the options to look at that over the next few months. Okay, and we can certainly come back to that if there are further questions on that, because I think that may be a topic you want to talk about more. So as I say, just a few quite a quick run through, I hope, of the sort of Thames vision and what we're doing to implement that long-term strategy. So on the natural Thames, one of the biggest things we've done in the last couple of years is to publish our Clean River Plan, our Clean Thames Plan, I should say, which has got 10 actions in it around sewage, litter, and all other forms of pollution in the river. The one sort of major action I just wanted to highlight this year has been the clean-up of the wet wipe accumulation at Hammersmith, which happened over the summer, which Grace and her team organised. I think I've got some pictures in a moment, actually, but it was a great success, and actually we did get some money from Thames Water to help fund that, although the PLA, I should say, put in the majority of the funding to do that. It's a good example of making something happen. I mean, I think there's a lot of sort of hand-wringing around sustainability, and sometimes it's nice to have albeit a small scale, but a good news story of something actually happening and improving, so we were pleased about that. We are also continuing to invest in our passive debris collectors along the river to improve the collection of litter and other sort of detritus that finds its way into the river. There's a big new one down at London Gateway, which London Gateway Port helped to fund. Are there some pictures on the? Oh, there we go. I was going to go, but I just thought I'd put the pictures up of Hammersmith. There we go. So there's some pictures of the wet wipe. There's the local MP, Fleur Anderson, who we had an event this week to just sort of celebrate this achievement, and it was the same week that Fleur Anderson introduced the bill into Parliament to ban plastic in wet wipes. So she's been a huge supporter of the project. And obviously lots of Thames 21 volunteers have been really involved in this site over the years, which we're really appreciative of. So just going back to the other update items on this area. So as I say, the Thames Tideway tunnel is now complete and fully operational. There are only marine works left at 2 sites, which are sort of in the process of being removed from the river. So obviously that will enable the river and the river traffic to go back to its pre-Tideway tunnel operation, which is good news. We've got a system in place which is what we call an interim system of warning for those CSOs I was talking about earlier. So if there is going to be a discharge, clearly there needs to be some warning for potential traffic going past, and there is an interim system in place, and we're working with Tideway on the permanent solution, which needs to be in place for the next 100 years plus. But the great news, as I say, is that actually since the tunnel was completed and connected, there have been no spills into the river of sewage, which I don't think sort of gets enough. It's too good news to get a lot of publicity, I think. So, but it is good news, and it doesn't mean there isn't sewage in the river, of course, because there are still many other Thames Water sites further upstream. But the vast majority of very big spills into the sewers, into the river, were from the Bazalgette sewers. So it is very good news. So a few other sort of facts and figures on our sort of Clean Thames plan. So 77% actions complete. That's good news. We have lots of participants in this. This is an area where we engage a lot with organisations who work with volunteers and other members of the community. And it's great to sort of see that so many people want to do that. Say 5 million wet wipes removed at the Hammersmith clean-up. And we've also, through our Environment Fund, awarded around £60,000 of funding to projects to sort of fill the gaps. Now, that is not a lot of money. And when we talk about the cost of, some of the measures required, like at some of the big treatment works, it's huge. It's billions of pounds. And I think I will just say before we get into the questions, it's worth remembering that the primary bodies responsible for cleaning up the river from sewage are the water companies, and the Environment Agency is the regulator. And we do have quite a sort of discrete role, and we're trying to sort of fill some gaps, like, for example, handheld E. coli monitors, which nobody else was funding for the recreational users. But the primary organisations here are the water companies and the regulator. Okay, so I think finally on the environment side, the Thames Environment Fund, which is, as I say, has covered some funding for sort of sewage and other related clean river infrastructure. Also provides funding for other things, and we run this on an annual basis. I'm pleased to say, in fact, next year there'll be more money in the fund. So if you are, if you hear from an environmental organisation, do look out for that and keep in touch with us, because there will be more funding available. Here are some examples of some things we've funded: Greenwich Yacht Club, safety boat electrification, which is good news. Greenland Dock Floating Wetland Western Extension Project, and so on. So there's various things which we've funded, and please do look out for next year's fund. I have mentioned air quality, but and I have previously talked quite a bit about the monitoring work that we've done. We have installed a number of monitors on different parts of the river in order to try and assess the river impacts as opposed to the landside impacts. And so far, the monitoring has showed that the things which people are concerned about in terms of air quality haven't been particularly significant. So cruise ships, for example, when they're alongside in Greenwich, don't cause a very significant increase in air quality issues. Much more is caused by the nearby sort of road network. But nevertheless, there are clearly sort of local hotspots that tend to be more around the passenger piers, and we'll continue to monitor those sites. And there are other riverside sites which we're bringing into the picture to try and get the fullest possible understanding of air quality along the river. There is also a further sort of information on this on our website, which you can go onto if you want to drill down into that. So coming on then to the sort of the second part of the strategy, the destination side of things. So this one of the things which, as we're particularly charged with doing is ensuring that any access to the river and any use of the river for recreation or anything else is as safe as it possibly can be. And we've had this year, very, very sadly and tragically, two quite high-profile cases of children drowning in the river who clearly were not supervised or understanding of the risks that they were facing on the sites they were in. And so we've been working, we worked before the summer holidays to kind of quite quickly produce a public information campaign around sort of education around water safety. Here are some of the sort of screenshots from it. We were keen to do that in multiple languages to try and reach as many sort of parts of the community as we could do. It's all around the sort of call to action around stay back, stay out, stay safe, don't mess with the tidal Thames. And we know from our sort of work with the company that it had a very broad reach. We estimate that it reached around 6 million people via different routes on social media and so on. Quite a lot of coverage in the sort of traditional media, news and so on. We worked with local community groups to try and get the message out. Obviously, it's about trying to reach some of the young people directly, but also others in the community who may well then be able to keep them safe. So we are going to be extending this next year, and in fact we're going to, with a sort of slightly longer to prepare for it, we're going to be extending this campaign and working with a lot of other organisations to try and maximise the impact of that. So, sort of coming on to some of the activities on the Thames. The Active Thames, obviously, is our sort of brand for the work we do around promoting the use of the river, the blue space. We have, through the Active Thames Fund, so far awarded over £500,000 to different projects. And we try to do that in a very diverse manner, in the sense of working with all the different organisations along the river in different parts. And obviously we've got sites from Thurrock and Gravesend right up to Richmond and Teddington and so on. So again, do look out for that. There'll be further round of funding next year. So if you've got a project which you think could be eligible for the fund, then we'll be pleased to receive it. We are absolutely in the business of trying to diversify river usage. One of the things which we've been doing is working through what we call a master plan to look at all the ways in which the river and the land interact. What facilities do you need on land in order to see greater use of the river? And at the moment, we've done eight boroughs. All of these are on the website, and you can drill down into different sites on the website. And then we've got 5 more in progress. We will, by the end of 2027, have completed all 23 riparian boroughs. And so this is really about sort of influencing the way that planning authorities consider the river, so that we've done the work beforehand to sort of feed into those processes. We continue to provide longer-term partnership funding to kind of a wide range of organisations that work on the river. Certainly the Thames Festival Trust, which we are strong supporters of, and Totally Thames. Adrian's giving me a thumbs up, so that's nice. We've been funding since 2008. Thames Estuary Partnership, Thames Tide Fest. We've also sort of been extending our work with some of the water safety bodies, Atlantic Pacific Bridge Watch, the Black Swimming Association. Quite sort of shocking statistics around the very low proportion of people from non-white backgrounds who can swim, and so the Black Swimming Association does some great work in those communities. We also work with very sort of local charities, and I have to sort of there give a plug at the end to our Santa on the Thames, which got a lot of publicity last year, which raised a lot of money for the Evelina Children's Hospital, and which we're going to be rerunning this year in a different part of the river. More to come on that. So finally, on the trading Thames, so I've left this till last, but in a sense, if you work in the PLA, most people in the PLA are sort of most actively involved in this, and it is, in a sense, what funds everything else. So all of that other activity wouldn't happen if we didn't have a commercial river from which the PLA raises its resources. And that's very much the model that the PLA was set up on back in 1908. The commercial activity of the river is the way in which our organisation is funded. So from our point of view, there is a very, very positive story to report here. We've got London Gateway, which is the Dubai Port's owned container port in South Essex, is growing all of the time. It currently has 4 berths operational. The construction of berth 5 has just started, and the final berth 6, is in planning. London Gateway won the biggest single sort of container ship consortium in the world. It's called the Gemini Alliance, which consists of the companies Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd. And London Gateway won that business from Felixstowe earlier this year, which has increased the amount of goods coming into London Gateway. And it's been pretty much full ever since then. A little bit further upstream from London Gateway, we've got obviously the Port of Tilbury, which was until London Gateway the biggest terminal in the port. Tilbury is also expanding and has sort of responded to the change in the market with London Gateway dealing with the big deep sea container ships by focusing on ro-ro, specialist goods, aggregates, and a lot of other materials. And currently it's got an application in for what they're calling Tilbury 3, which is in planning. And then finally, in fact, this was out today. There's Corey Environmental, who transport the waste from many London boroughs in the west of London and central London through to Bexley, which is the biggest single combined, so the single biggest waste from energy plant in the country. They have got an application into the Secretary of State to capture the carbon from that facility and then to transport it by sea to the depleted oil fields in the North Sea. So that was given permission today, in fact, by the Secretary of State, which is the biggest single carbon capture and storage from waste plant in the country. So that's really exciting and uses the river. So we'll be talking a lot about the use of the river for decarbonising in general. It's a sort of a corridor to help decarbonise the whole of London. In terms of sort of, that was a sort of longer term picture. In terms of this year, I won't go through this in detail, but we are on track, in fact, this year to carry more tonnage in the port than any year since 1973. So we've had a stronger year this year for trade than previously. I say an 11% increase since this time last year, an increase in exports. I was asked at an event on the weekend about what we export. In fact, most of the increase in exports is waste and scrap, as opposed to great British manufacturing goods. But it all counts, and it is useful for obviously products elsewhere. But we have increased our exports. There has been a big reduction in aggregates because the London construction market is very down at the moment. So that has been poor. Oil imports actually sort of rise and fall depending on where oil is coming into in the UK. So it doesn't sort of, in a way, although it's up, it doesn't sort of particularly provide a sort of a long-term trend, that figure. We are sort of continuing to invest, and we're very pleased actually this week. In fact, this is actually from 2 days ago. We welcomed the new Maritime Minister, Keir Mather, and our local MP to launch our 2 new pilot cutters. So in order to service that growth in port trade, we need vessels and people, and we're constantly investing in both. On this occasion, we were celebrating the vessel side and the launch of our commander and leader, and these vessels are absolutely essential to the pilotage service to take pilots out to meet and ships both departing and coming into the port and bringing the pilots safely to and from. So that's a very, very good milestone. And there's Johnson there, and me, and the Minister, and our local MP. And that was it. So there's further information on a lot of that online, and also as we go through, if there are things that we can't answer this evening, I'll leave this email address up here, because we always do follow up, and I hope that somebody now doesn't say I emailed and we didn't follow up, but we always do try and follow up every question we get after the event. So if you do have something which we can't answer this evening, then there is the email address to send it to. So on that, I think I'll open to questions from the floor, and as I say, I will either answer them or I'll ask colleagues to field them, and we'll also take any online as they come through. So we've got some roving mics, because the acoustics in here are not absolutely brilliant, so you may need a mic to... So, questions? The gentleman there.
Thank you. Okay, Steve Davis, representing Sailing on the River, although I think my question's got a very personal aspect, and it does get Jim Trimmer up to the front. Could we have an update, please, on how the planning demolition of Robin's Wharf is progressing? I know it went to public inquiry.
This is the bit I always love. I'm just going to walk up to the front now. Normally I'd expect music and dry ice, so some people at home can't hear me.
Oh yes, that's the other reason for using the mics. Otherwise, people online, we will all just be talking quietly, or silently. So.
Thank you. This involves a planning inquiry around the redevelopment of Ebbsfleet United Football Club and an awful lot of housing, thousands and thousands of units, and it would also mean the ceasing of operations if there was a compulsory purchase order, but ceasing of operations on Robin's Wharf, which is a wharf in Gravesham, occupied by Bretts and AI, so handling aggregates, very important for pilotage because of the vessels that go there, together with a pretty major impact on Seacon and on Britannia Refined Metals, who are one of only 2 lead refineries in the world that can refine lead to the standards required by top industry. And so there was a planning inquiry which started in June and ended in September, but there was awful lot of correspondence. And our case is that the planning application is completely contrary to local, national and regional planning, in that it would lose safeguarded wharfs for economic use, and also, of course, to build the large number of houses that are needed in the rest of Kent. And the developer's case, pure and simple, is politics. If you want housing, here's housing. So the inspector, it's a decision that's been made by the Secretary of State, and we are expecting that decision next March. We appeared as a Rule 6 party, so we participated fully in the inquiry. say with Brett's and AI, and we are all now hoping we put a very good case forward. The case he thinks is a good case, but it's planning and therefore it's politics. But we remain hopeful.
Thank you, Jim.
And I'm a planner, I'm allowed to say that.
Yes, Ralph.
Robin. First one is, has Mr. Jacobs issued this report to the MMO, which didn't come out on your first discussion about the HRO? The second is about Denton Wharf. You've now got a shore power supply in there of 0.5 megawatt. Is that for use for is it charging, or just for ensuring that vessels are moored there can have some power to operate the systems? And the last question really is around on the Masthouse Terrace Pier. We have, or have been made aware of, that it's being used to take water from Thames Water illegally, apparently, because there's a court case about to start. And they're actually, this company's running hoses down from the land side into Masthouse Terrace Pier. Okay. Is that something that's gone ahead with your support?
Okay, thank you very much. I have to write these down now. I find I sort of, forget your first one. So I think going through in order, the answer is that we don't know whether the inspector's report has been received by the MMO yet. We were told I think the last thing I saw, the MMO told us they were expecting to receive it. They haven't actually informed us if they have received it. And so, but I think it was sort of fairly imminent a couple of weeks ago. And then they aim to consider it within 6 weeks, I think is their sort of stated position. But for any of us who've sort of worked in the public sector, which is highly stretched, and often these timetables get a bit elongated, don't they? So, but that was the latest position as I know it. The Denton Wharf power is in relation primarily to the tugs. And it's what they call the hotel load. In other words, it's to power them alongside. So tugs require a lot of power. So sort of fully electric tugs, of which there are some examples now operating in other ports, require very, very big shoreside connections, which we don't have at the moment. Although it's something which we are talking to Svitzer about, the company. But this is specifically so when they're alongside, they can power the vessel from the shore power. That is correct, isn't it? And Grace is nodding. Jim is definitely the person, I think, on Masthouse Terrace Pier to answer that one.
The answer is no, and the particular operator has also damaged the pier because he comes in at the downstream end and knocks railings, so no.
So no, they haven't got permission?
Not in the slightest.
And what are we doing about that?
That's a matter of which is tied up.
We are following up on.
It's Thames Water, I believe, are taking them and prosecuting.
Right, so we're following up on that. Yes, Bronwyn.
Hi, Robin. Thank you for that. It's really good to have the update. A couple of quick thank yous first. Thanks to your brilliant team on Active Thames for all the support they're giving to recreational activities along the river. And that's just not, sorry, I'm a member of a rowing club, but it's not just us, it's lots. And it's far more than I've ever seen in the past. And for consulting us on stuff. And secondly, to the guys in the Chief Harbour Masters team for being very responsive when we report excessive speed and wash, so really responsive. And then there's always a but, isn't there? Last year I did raise, actually it was with Johnson Cox last year, I think, the question of why we still allow the RIBs to go with no speed limits once they pass, I think it's Tower Bridge. And despite the growth in traffic, trying to encourage recreational. So is there a case, I said last year, for a review of why that is such a difference between the moment they go through Tower Bridge, there's no speed limit, and can we have a review? Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for the acknowledgements. But James, do you want to take the RIBs question?
Yeah, if I cover the speed limits, just so people can understand, and I will probably have to refer to the exact details. So the main speed limits for majority of the watercraft is up to Margaret Ness, so from the estuary up to Margaret Ness, which is Beckton Way, no speed limit. Above Margaret Ness, so effectively Beckton, all the way through to Wandsworth, it's 12 knots, and then above Wandsworth, it's 8 knots, and all the creeks, it's 8 knots. However, for vessels that have a high-speed certificate of compliance, so that includes the RIBs, the clippers, the emergency services when they're not on blue light, but relocating our own vessels when they're moving into patrol areas or to go and do tasks, they're allowed to operate at higher speed. From Margaret Ness to St Saviour's Docks, that's 30 knots, with the exception of the area around Thames Barrier, which is reduced for the Thames Barrier. And then from Lambeth up to Wandsworth Bridge, again, it's 25 knots. So they're the speed limits. Details are in Thames Bylaw 16. And at present, we're working on the code of conduct, as Robin put in the slides there, for RIB operators. We've been dealing with other stakeholders, including the River Residents Group, to try and get that with the operators. Once we've got that in place, noting that the RIB operators have been there since 2008, those speed limits have been in place since 2012. So we are just collating data, seeing what happens, and then working out what the future looks like.
So I guess the view we've taken in the sense of a more fundamental review is that we should first try and work out whether all the parties can coexist in a happier way through following the code of practice without sort of a more fundamental change, which I guess would be either a reduction in speed limits or the non-issuing of licenses to those companies, which would mean they would go out of business or not be able to operate, which are obviously a much more fundamental change. At the moment, what we're saying is we want to try and make the existing system work better for everybody through following the code of practice.
Can you just clarify which code of practice is that? And
Well,
is
sorry,
it on
it's
website?
the RIB code. So
But I was interested in the clippers as well, because it seems odd that they're limited up to Tower Bridge, and then there is literally no limit below Tower Bridge, unless there are other, small vessels.
So there is I can't remember the bylaws regarding washing your wash and wake. So that's in place. Hence, we also investigate in other parts of the Thames where there is a report of a wash or wake issue straight away. So is the master, so we are looking at one incident at present. Was the master sensible based on the recreational users that were in the water at the time? So it is also down to master's discretion, both commercial and leisure.
And that's even within the speed limit, isn't it? In fact, so the speed limit isn't, in that instance, the key issue. Was the wash unreasonable, even if the vessel was operating within the speed limit? Does that answer your ish? I mean, I suppose the point is, we at the moment we're not saying that no to RIBs. I suppose bluntly, we're saying that the RIBs can continue to operate, but we want them to do so following the code of good practice that we've worked on with them. Peter.
Peter Finch at River Thames Society. Can I congratulate the PLA for the announcement about stairs on the river? Quite a number of them, as you know, are in a state of disrepair and not very safe, and it's really good to know that you've now got the money and the will to do something about it. Hopefully it will include the causeways that lead to the stairs. I'm assuming that's the package. My question really is about involvement of young people on the river. It was interesting what you said about the packs you sent out, about the dangers of the river and so on. But the question of training, does the PLA have a role in encouraging people to seek work on the river? And to what extent is the PLA promoting the river as a good place for people to work? And also, in terms of training people who want to work on the river, can you give us some indication as to your role in this? And could I just add a cheeky one, which isn't anything to do with the PLA, but it's still frustrating that we haven't got a ferry between Gravesend and Tilbury. I think something should be done about that.
Thank you. So yes, on training, we absolutely do. So I could say quite a few things on this, but I'll just let me focus on the Thames Skills Academy. So we're the sort of one of the co-founders, in fact now the main funder of the Thames Skills Academy, which is trying to bring together all of the employers on the river to improve skills essentially, and that's trying to get more apprentices onto the river, both for boatmaster licenses and also marine engineers. We work with some of the colleges, South Essex College and others on that. Also to kind of create a sort of cohort so that people, an apprentice joining Thames Clippers isn't in isolation and knows people who work at, Corey or the PLA or whatever. So that's one thing. We've also set up a system with the Thames Skills Academy of continuous professional development, CPD. So this has been operating for a year now, two years. So it's a points-based system. So for the first time, all vessel masters on the river and many deckhands have signed up as well, need to accumulate points by doing CPD activities so that people carry on throughout their careers improving and learning. So there's a couple of examples. So we're very, there's other things we can talk about, but we're really very, it's really important for safety, isn't it? Because of people, if you look at sort of safety, very, very many incidents are a result of human error, so therefore the more training we can promote, the better. Yes, we agree about the ferry. We're very keen to see the ferry go downstream to Gravesend. I'm sure lots of people who work at the PLA would like that. And also to reinstate the ferry that goes across the river from Gravesend to Tilbury. In fact, we had a meeting of all the parties on that yesterday, which I convened, and we need to do some more work to understand what is there a sort of a more cost-effective business model, because the public subsidy requirement nobody's stepping forward to fill at the moment, unfortunately it's a service which probably can never operate without public subsidy in that location. So we're trying to sort of look at is there a different commercial model which might make it achievable. Shall I go Sean online? Or?
Yes. We've got a couple of questions that we received in advance, and also one just received online from Candice. So they all relate to Mudlark. So Jim, you might want to come down to the front. So the first one online is Candice Cuss, who is asking about your vision, Robin, for the Mudlark community and how you see the practice managed in the future. Do you have plans to use what she says is £140,000 of annual revenue from permit sales to hire a dedicated staff member, such as a head of mudlarking, to bring transparency, accountability, efficiency and empathy to the process? Or is some of the money used for other foreshore-related upgrades? Does the mudlarking permit revenue go toward mudlarking-related improvements?
Jamie is our Director of Empathy, I think, so I think you'll be fine. Yeah.
I've got a couple more questions on mudlarking to come to.
I was prepared for the other questions. I'm not sure we get that much money, to be fair, and part of the context I was going to do for my other questions is there's a lot of work involved around foreshore permitting. We have 4 different categories of permit, and there's a lot of issues around all of them. We deal with the Coroner's Court, we deal with the Museum of London, all of which is a small part of my job, but a fair amount of time, and we've got 2 other people, Pippa and Maxine in my team, who also work on foreshore permitting. It's a small part of their job and a large part of their time. And of course Sean's team as well, as she's pointed out. So we do what we can do, and I think certainly the approach to mudlark and permitting is a lot better than it used to be. We did have somebody do it. There was a few permits that were issued. You're going to get some stats in a minute. There's an awful lot more now. So we try the best we can in terms of information. We certainly looked at the renewable permits when we introduced them earlier this year, having listened to the community that they felt they were losing experience. So we try and be certainly proactive And I was on the foreshore today on compliance, and everyone is very, very keen to see me. So we try as we can. If people have suggestions, and again, for those online, wherever you are, send us an email. People know who I am. So I'm more than happy to, talk through things.
Thank you very much, Jim.
We've got a couple more questions on mudlarks.
Okay.
If we can just
Go-
do those.
Be
No,
mudlarking together.
you're on camera, Jim, it's fine. So a question from Vicky Anand around foreshore permits. How many renewal applications for foreshore permits have been received since the revised system was introduced late last year? What's the average length of time for these to be considered, where applicants fulfil the 3 criteria laid down? And are there plans to review the process? And Amy Sinden has asked a similar question, as has Liz Anderson.
Right, thank you. Okay, so as I say, this was something we stopped the 3-year permits when we stopped issuing permits. We've restarted now, but a 1-year permit in order to try and increase the churn of people, so more people get to experience being on the foreshore. And because people then did say that they were, because they were losing their 3-year permits, there was a diminution in experienced mudlarkers able to pass on their experience. We introduced a new category, which people may be aware of. And I think this question relates to that. We've had 86 applications for the 1-year renewable permit. 62 have been decided, 40 accepted, 22 refused. There have been 3 appeals to the Chief Executive. And those 3 appeals have been successful. We've not worked out the average timescale. I will admit that it's my decision, and sometimes I have waited a few days to make the decision because I've got other stuff. But again, I think we try and do them as quickly as we can. And I think there is one other question, but I think I'm more than happy perhaps to send an email back on that because I've got a lot of numbers for that one.
I think anything I just add, I think, on there is an element of judgment. Obviously, I've looked at these 3 appeals, and in fact, we have sort of taken a view that in those cases there was stronger evidence on reflection than we thought, but there is no exact science here. The criteria is around, a substantive contribution to the cultural, historical life of London from the number of fines and the way they're reported and the way they're communicated. And obviously, lots of people would like to be in that category, but we do have to draw the line somewhere because of the overall requirement to limit the number of people on the foreshore. So that's a sort of preface for saying that not every appeal will necessarily be successful, even if 3 have. But we do have to sort of be able to draw the line somewhere. Okay, so Marianne, yes.
Thank you. Good evening. Firstly, can I say thank you as a Bridgewatch volunteer for your support for the organisation and continuing to promote us. And equally, as someone who likes to mess around on the river in a rowing boat, a cutter being rowed, thank you for all the help and support you provide when we're arranging the rowing races. And I'd encourage everyone to come down and see the Great River Race every September, best day on the river. But I'm really delighted to see the new code of practice for the RIBs and for the PLA taking responsibility, stepping up to the issues that have been raised in this forum and acknowledging that there are concerns around noise and safety and speed. So I'm really pleased to see that code of practice being put into place. So equally, one of the other issues that's constantly raised around noise are the riverboats, the party boats. Now, the majority, and I sit on the licensing committee at the City of London, and I chaired it for 3 years. So I'm very well aware that the issues on licensing, it's across, the boats are transient, but they're licensed at one end of the river and they're going down the other. And there's no sort of joined up communication for local authorities to actually comment when applications are made. And equally, there's this issue over who's responsible for dealing with the enforcement of the noise. Now, if it's a land-based premises, it's easy for enforcement officers to just walk in and deal with the problems. But being on the river, they're moving very quickly. Now, the Port of London, the Port Health takes the boat out, I think, 6 times a year. That's the only 6 times is the amount that we can afford to take the boat out to monitor. Now, they seem to know when we're coming out. But what I would like to see is, given that you've taken that step up now to acknowledge that you have some sort of responsibility for noise and safety on the river with the RIPS, can you do the same with the riverboats and work with the Port Health and the licensing boroughs to actually have a code of best practice to ensure that the very small minority of boats that are causing the problems don't ruin it for the rest of the operators? And I think if the PLA was to come to the party with your enforcement powers as well, I think that would really resolve a number of the issues that the residents have along the riverside. And my final question would be about heat barges. We had a very interesting report to the City of London Planning last few weeks ago about heat barges, which is a really interesting idea. And I'd like to actually know more, and perhaps this forum would like to understand more about how they would work, and again, access to the foreshore and how that would impact it, and the practicalities of the heat barges. But I think it's a really interesting idea. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'll just start with that, then I'll go back to the noise issue. Yes, I mean, we're really enthusiastic about the idea of heat barges in principle as well. I mean, this is essentially transporting waste heat from somewhere like the Bexley Energy from Waste plant, which is currently, most of which currently goes up into the atmosphere, capturing that heat and transporting it in some form on a barge to a district heating system. And we are working very closely with Corey on that, Jim, are we not?
We are.
Correct. Right answer, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of work. And also we've met with the city, we've met with Greenwich. It's a sort of interim solution, I think, because clearly at some point the idea is to tunnel and therefore deliver heat, a sort of like a neighbourhood heat and power approach. But until that time, I've been told effectively it's a barge with a very large hot water bottle, which is the hot water that's then fed in, as of course happens now at the Churchill Estate in Pimlico, where it used to be fed from Battersea Power Station and is now fed from a small power station. The idea is potentially this could supplement that approach going forward. So yes, we're dealing with a lot of that approach, and also water source heat pumps, and a lot of issue about those and questions about those we're dealing with as well.
But it's another one of these ways in which the river can play a sort of broader part in decarbonisation, right? So which is not just about the vessels. So going back to the part, I think let's take that away. We've talked about this issue about the noise in party boats a lot in these forums, and I think, I could give you the sort of standard answer, which I don't think is what you're looking for, which is, it's the responsibility of Port Health when the vessels are underway, and please do report, Now, and that is all true, as it stands at the moment, it's not something the PLA has, it is not our responsibility from a statutory point of view, and therefore we haven't taken the lead on that. And we have no powers, no. Exactly, that's right. So I think we don't have powers in that space, but let's sort of take it away and see, is there something we can do by way of a communication with that sort of community? Does anybody hear from any of the party boat operators? I suspect not, but should I just say there are an eclectic group of companies, and sort of coordinating them to act together might be a challenge. But anyway, let's take it away and have a think about it. Yes, I'll go to the gentleman who's had his hand up for a while.
First of all, Robin, I'd like to echo Peter's comments about the access to the foreshore and the Waterman's Stairs. Very, very good news there. It's absolutely vital that the riparian communities are able to access the foreshore and do it safely. 2 questions. First of all, in terms of timing, presumably it's going to be a phased renovation. When would you expect the final phase to complete? Great question. And the second question would be in terms of signage, absolutely. Now, you mentioned signage. Would this be safety signage, or would this be street nameplates, or would this be historical interpretation boards?
So on the timing question, so we are the first ones we're doing are the 6 in the high category, the high priority category that the PLA owns, which we need to do some maintenance on. They're already in our maintenance plan, in fact, and so we'll be getting on with those. And then we're in the process of working out the project to do all those which we don't own. So I'm anticipating it will take a year or two to work through that list. As I say, we've allocated around £1 million to do the work. We will no doubt need to work with an external contractor. So we're working out that project plan at the moment to phase that. But it'll probably take a year or two. I had actually been thinking mainly of safety signage, which is what we've been sort of focusing on. But actually, yeah, the point about the historical interpretation of what these structures are, which is interesting in many cases, is one as well. I'm not sure if we thought about that, but we have been thinking about that. Okay. And Sian, do you want to?
And yes, we've been working with Gravesham Council around Gravesend. If you're going for a walk around there's loads of new interpretive signage gone up explaining what's going on the river, the history of the river, particularly from a maritime perspective. So that's something we funded and worked on really recently.
Thank you, Sian. Should we do one more online?
Yeah.
Okay, do one, then I'll come to...
Sure.
Yeah.
Michelle Loverick has asked a question about cruise ships in central London. At the river residents groups, they're genuinely confused. The PLA's 2025 list of charges says that a company called London Cruise and Yacht manages cruise ships at Greenwich and the Belfast. We cannot find a company by the name either online or at Companies House. Can you explain how this arrangement works? Who is negotiating with Viking about residential impacts? The PLA or London Cruise and Yacht? Also, the residents groups may be able to help with connecting Viking to the affected residents. A welcome development. Thank you.
Yeah, well, no, thank you for that offer, I think. We would certainly like to act as the sort of the bringer together of people on this, because, the operator clearly is the cruise ship operator. It's got the responsibility to operate in a way which causes least impact. And I don't think as yet there's been much direct communication with them and the local community, which they do in many other places in the world. I don't think that's a sort of because they've been sort of consciously avoiding people. I think they when we spoke to them, they've got other examples of other cities they call in where they've got really well-established community relations. So I think we're aiming to sort of replicate that. The company is a company which serves both Greenwich and Tilbury, and Thames Clipper is involved in that in terms of using their vessels for the transport of passengers and so on. I don't know why I haven't, it can't be found on Companies House, but it certainly is an entity, and we liaise with them. But I think I think the PLA is taking responsibility for the sort of the relationship with the community and Viking. So I think that's probably a sort of side issue, really. Yes. Well, just go over.
Thank you. You seem quite apologetic about trade, where it's the lifeblood of any port. What do you do about educating children about the importance of trade and the importance of shipping?
I think maybe it's because at the end of my presentation I was needing a glass of water, I think. No, I'm not at all apologetic about trade. I'm in these audiences, they tend to be the topic we talk about least. So, but no, I'm definitely not apologetic about it. I'm extremely proud of the fact that London is back being the biggest port in the UK. We're the closest to the main markets in the UK. And so why on earth would you bring a container into Felixstowe or Southampton where you can bring it close to the market into London? So I'm very enthusiastic about that. I'm very enthusiastic about what it enables us to do, because we have, the benefit of revenue growth, which means we've been able to invest in our systems, in our port control centre, and so on and so on. So all of that I'm extremely enthusiastic about. So I hope that was a bit more energised. In terms of the education piece, So I think we certainly do some work around education in general, around the role of the Thames through the Thames Explorer Trust, working with Thames Festival, with Thames Trust, and it doesn't tend to be specifically about trade, but that is included within it. Certainly, the history of the port is something which a lot of people are very interested in. But maybe we should do more on that. We had an exhibition here actually about 3 years ago where we used our archive to tell the story of the Port of London, and that was right up to the present, including the sort of the growth in the last 5-10 years. So that had a lot of people come through, which was a good opportunity to engage with the community.
I mean, I'm a maritime historian, and in my experience, when I tell anybody that I'm involved in maritime, they look very puzzled. They don't seem to understand that most of the stuff in their house came aboard ship. And that's really what I'm getting at, you know, and it's the education of kids that you need to do to make that, because containers now are just boxes in ports. Yeah. They're not spilling their goods, so people don't understand the importance.
Very true. Yes, so I'll, the gentleman there on the aisle, and then I'll go to the lady.
Oh, thank you. The PLA says that they want to increase the use of the river. But for private boats coming into the river, there's very little place for them to moor up on a temporary basis. Have you any plans to increase the mooring? During the Olympics, you actually installed several mooring buoys where people can come. But of course, as far as I know, the only place I can come into is either just outside St. Catherine Docks or go to Hermitage Barge. Hermitage Barge only have 2 visitor moorings. And so there's a problem. Anybody wants to get off or come into London just for a short period of time. Have you any plans to increase the use in that sector? Also, trying to get off the river from, I remember from Pimlico going up to Erith, there is, I think there was only one place that somebody can get off, which was Morrison's Pier, I think. And this was after 11 o'clock at night. So you're coming in there, there's no way for anybody to get off if they need to get off on the river.
So yes, we are doing some work around that. James, do you want to?
Yeah, so we've had a couple of conversations with different users. It's a bit of a challenging, you know, the river has changed, leisure boating has changed over the last 2 or 3 decades. There's now more people are probably doing rowing than are going out in motor or sailing boats. So we've been engaging with people. There are a number of yacht clubs up and down, so from Thurrock, Erith, Greenwich, where there are visitor moorings and places where they can go there. Part of the challenge, which we all recognise, is that a lot of the riparian councils and stuff like that, you know, they've got funding shortages, so you ask them, you know, can you prioritise a sort of an access point for leisure users over social care? That's not going to happen. So the conversations that we've had is to understand where potentially some of these areas are, and we've kick-started a project to look at least 2 discrete locations, one off Dartford Creek, one off Barking Creek, where we can put in some short-term lay-by moorings, so someone wanting to wait for the tide can go onto those ones there. Everything further up, so St Catherine's, going into St Catherine's itself to use the visitor moorings in there, we're not looking into those areas at present because there are some commercial or yacht club opportunities. Yeah.
And it's rather difficult. There's no other place for you to go. And sometimes the moorings outside Tencatrick is full.
Yes.
And you can't do anywhere else.
If people have a look on the website, we do have details of where visitor moorings are, because yes, Hermitage do, Downings Roads have visitor moorings. There are a number of visitor moorings on the river, and I do appreciate people say there aren't any visitor moorings. Every time we consent a new pier, we make sure there's visitor moorings on them, and that's part of the Section 106 benefits that we bring. So there might not be as many as people want, and they might be in the locations. They might not be in the locations people want. That's something, you know, we can deal with, but there are visitor moorings. I think this gentleman here wants to say something.
Yeah, to answer the gentleman's question, Greenwich Yacht Club has a visitor pontoon. It can get a bit bouncy with the clippers and the fast wibs, but that has direct access to the land and contact details on our website.
Coming into Greenwich, and I don't know if I'm correct, but it seems as though you have to book it before you even decide to come in, so you can't just decide to come in and...
No, you do have to book beforehand, because we have races and other visitors coming in, and it's not...
One more quick question. If you're coming down the river before 11 o'clock, can you stop off at the clipper stations to drop somebody off?
TfL piers, you mean?
I don't think officially, because they're all on scheduled services, and what they won't want is someone just, I'll be here for a little bit, and then the boat's coming in. And I do get about it, but I think, just sort of stopping somewhere, I think booking is a general thing, and even at the visitor moorings that are there, people actually kind of want to know you're turning up, I think.
So I think have a look on the website because we do advertise all the places that are available, and as James said, we're also looking to invest in a couple of additional lay-by moorings because of those locations. Okay, I'm conscious of the time because sometimes people want to sort of go and eat and things, but let's take a few more questions. Yes, I think we'll go over this side. So.
Thank you. And I'm going to lower the tone again. It's good news about Thames Tideway Tunnel, obviously. However, last year, I think we were probably all of us who attend these meetings quite astonished to learn that there were quite a lot of legacy tripper boats and other vessels on the river, even in central London, that were able, if necessary, to discharge black water straight into the Thames. And we were told that most of those were being retired last autumn. Now, can we have assurance that there are no boats left on the Thames anywhere in sort of central London discharging raw sewage straight into the river?
Yes, we've got some very good progress on that under our general direction, which is requiring the disposal of sewage not into the river. So, Grace.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that by the end of this year, our kind of records are showing that 92% of the vessels on the river will be fully compliant with the general direction. It has taken longer for the vessels to get to that level than we had hoped. We've put in a kind of package of support to help vessel operators to reach that target. And we are kind of putting in a final deadline for that target, which is the end of April 2026. So by that point, we will be able to kind of take kind of enforcement action, and we have taken various parts of enforcement action against some vessels already, and we will be in a position to take enforcement action at that point. So it has taken longer than we had hoped, but I think we're in a really good position now with the vessels that are kind of achieving compliance.
And if there are boats that are discharging, raw sewage, will it be publicised so that people know? I mean, will there be any way of knowing which boats are being prosecuted?
Certainly, if there's a prosecution, that would be public. Yes. And I think if anybody's aware, and tell us, do tell us. I mean, we certainly can enforce against our direction, and obviously we need to have the evidence to be able to do that. But that is something which we will be. But part of the evidence, I mean, obviously there is the sort of, physically kind of going in and having a look, but there's also...
Which we do.
Which we also do. But there's also kind of evidence that the operator has a vessel which is capable of storing black water and has got evidence they've discharged it into an appropriate facility. So that's the sort of evidence which we tend to sort of focus on. But if you see something, then let us know. Okay. Yes, okay. Yes. I'm going to pass the mic forward. Thank you.
Hello. I just wondered, on your Access into the River project, whether and how you'll be telling local residents if work's going to be taking place near them. And I also wondered, on a separate matter, if you are responsible for overseeing the Great River Race, which, whilst I agree is a fantastic spectacle, it does leave us with quite significant issues at Millwall Slipway every year, and I'm at a loss to know who I go to get it sorted out. I think it's all fixable, but it's just really difficult to know who to work with.
Okay. I think on the access point, yes. I mean, we certainly, wherever we, if we've got a team, either ourselves or contractors who are going into a site, we'll need to sort of publicise in advance and make sure that people are aware it's going to happen. All of that we'll need to work out as part of our plan. People won't just kind of turn up and then, because people get very excited when they do that, don't they? So we won't do that. We'll definitely be communicating what's happening beforehand so that people know. So on the Great River Race, I'm not sure I've got an immediate answer, but
perhaps we have a chat. What issues are you talking about?
Litter and so on.
So we have rubbish left every year. It's very difficult to get rid of. There's damage that's been caused. It's noise. It starts very early in the morning.
This is this is when people are accessing when they're
when
boating,
it starts,
basically,
where the river road starts. Yes.
Okay. Well, let's take that away because I mean we certainly obviously we're involved in the race from a sort of safety management point of view, but also talking to the organisers. So we'll take that away. For perhaps James, if you can.
I've not been successful in getting it resolved via.
All right. We will undertake to. We will contact them and raise the point and say it's been raised at our public meeting and see what they say. Okay. Shall I just take a couple more questions and then we normally try to sort of wrap up by 8. So yes, let's go to this side.
Thank you. Good news about the stairs. Can you please name your 6 stairs that you're going to start work on and your other priority ones?
Can you remember the 6, Jim?
That's useful. Well, it would be nice to know all of them. Thank you.
Well,
we can certainly follow up afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes, Jim has an encyclopedic knowledge, but I think maybe this is 300 steps and stairs is pressing a point. But
other ones.
Yeah, if you give me your email address, I'll tell you. But let's put it this way: Alderman's is one of them. If people have a particular thing in Tower Hamlets.
Alderman's.
So we will make sure we communicate the list and in what order they're happening and when. So we will make sure that is communicated.
There's the 6. The 6 are all in the Tower Hamlets borough. That's for certain.
Alderman's doesn't need anything.
I can tell you the stairs, and I will. If people want to know, the stairs that are in Tower Hamlets that we own will be amongst the first, and I will tell people what they are.
So I think
we've acknowledged
this is,
ownership of them.
So I think just to sort of follow on this point, I think that we've only recently decided. In fact, we had our board meeting about a week ago where we decided we would spend a lot of additional money to improve these sites. One of the things we're doing, as well as the sort of project plan to actually do the works, is work out the communication around that. So forgive us if we don't have every single piece of information on this right now, but we will be communicating, which ones are in the list, which ones are a priority and why, when we'll be doing the work and so on. So that will all be communicated. But we are sort of hot off the press that we're going to be doing it, essentially. I think there's a gentleman in front. Yes, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. Totally different to my last one. One of the few ill effects of a nice clean river is that sailing boats sitting on a mooring grow an awful lot more weed than they used to the extent that the winter scrubbing off and adding anti-fouling is not enough. The boats normally dry out over a tide to do a quick scrub off of the weed midway through the year. And my question is really about the shortage of places to do this satisfactorily. And my own sailing club actually for a while had its own, except that it couldn't afford the PLA charge for having dumped a load of chalk on the mud. A couple of people I'm aware of being round to the River Medway to actually get lifted out to scrub. So really, could the PLA consider encouraging such places? Maybe they will be able to offer a short-term lift out for smaller boats at Denton on occasions. Maybe look more benevolently at any club that wants to put in a facility. Since ultimately it can be a safety issue. If you've got a very weed-covered boat, it doesn't go as fast as it should, which means you can't get out of trouble. It sometimes doesn't turn when it should, so you then might hit something. So
So I do, sorry, I do wonder if this is another thing a bit like visitor moorings, because I'm sort of just anecdotally aware there are definitely some lift-out facilities along the river. I wonder if we publicise them all so everybody who wants a lift-out facility knows where to access them, and maybe that's something we could have a look at to see if we can just collate and put on our website all the sites where there are facilities available. I mean, our Denton site is not ideal because of the scale of it, frankly. I mean, the boat lift there is, you know, huge, and you know, it's not an ideal site, and it's because it's a, you know, effectively an industrial site for sort of small recreational vessels. It's just not ideal, to be honest. But James, should I add to that?
Yeah, I think that, no, I grew up in a small South Coast port, and we used to run a small boat yard. And part of the problem, though, is as the number of leisure users and their boats come down, and the prices for everything goes up. We were talking about Robin's Wharf earlier. The ability for a commercially viable operation to exist gets more challenging, and I think that's the state of where the leisure industry is at present. But I think we can go away and definitely have a look at what is in the art of the possible.
Yeah, certainly publicity would help existing sites, and you know, there are some sites that volunteers would be quite happy to be made usable as long as it didn't suddenly then incur them a big bill.
Yes. Okay. Well, okay. If we can do sort of help to make sure that those sites that are available are well known about, that we'll try to do that. Okay. There aren't any more hands. That's probably because I said enough. Enough was enough. But okay, I'll take one more. It isn't quite 8 o'clock. I'll take one more, and then we will finish at 8. Because we've had sort of feedback from this session in the past. People feel a bit awkward about all leaving en masse if we go on too long. So I'm going to take the gentleman there, and then we'll finish.
Thank you. Robert Short, Greenwich Yacht Club. Not a question. Just want to say thank you for the award for our electric outboards. We've been using them a while now. They're very popular and have led to a significant reduction in the use of petrol outboards to get onto our moorings.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a very nice note for us, for you to finish on, so I do appreciate that. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming. As I say, there will be, for those points where we said we'll follow up, we've taken careful notes, and we will do so. And if you've got any further questions, do please send them to us on the email. But thank you very much for coming. Thank you.